Language is central to everything everywhere all at once. It functions as a tool for connection and as a source of alienation within the Wong family. Evelyn, Gong, Waymond, and Joy all exist within a linguistic web of English, Cantonese, and Mandarin, each language holding a different emotional weight and cultural significance. Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of this Everything Everywhere All at Once essay, review, analysis, rant, whatever you want to call it. I need to start this off by saying that as I was editing part 1, you may have noticed that I decided to make this into a 2-part video instead of having one big essay. So I decided to wait a little bit before putting it together and uploading it. Hopefully you didn't have to wait too long. For anyone who isn't aware, and I'm sure many of you aren't, my background is in literary translation. Anyone who does know me knows that I just love talking about language and linguistics and multilingualism. I don't know if language is one of the things that comes up to people's minds when watching this movie. I'm sure to some degree it is because it's inevitable, and especially because the writers of this movie do a fantastic job of incorporating their subtitles and making it one of the least chaotic things in this movie, which is surprising to say the least, because there is a lot happening with language that I think goes unnoticed by some people. But for me, someone who's a native bilingual living in a foreign country, language and language politics were the first thing to come to my mind. It's pretty much present from the start of the movie till the end. At the very start of the film, we can see Gong being frustrated and condescending towards Joy when she doesn't speak properly in Cantonese, something that immediately also shows their generational divide. Evelyn is very aware of her broken English, and language is a consistent source of insecurity for her. Language reinforces her feelings of inadequacy, especially as an immigrant navigating a culture that constantly reminds her that she doesn't quite belong. And meanwhile, Joy, as a second-generation immigrant, is far more comfortable speaking English, but this fluency in the new language is also alienating her from the older members of her family and her cultural roots. The linguistic dissonance between Joy and Gong becomes a metaphor for her broader struggles with identity. Joy, in particular, exists in a liminal space. Language deepens the emotional chasm between these generations, as the words that Joy needs to say or wants to say, which involve her frustrations, her feelings, her desire to be accepted by her family, are often lost in translation. The multiverse in Everything Everywhere All at Once beautifully reflects the bilingual and bicultural experience. Just as Evelyn shifts between universes where she has to adapt to new roles and realities, bilingual individuals navigate multiple identities depending on their cultural and linguistic contexts. Words and phrases that one says in a specific language might not fully translate to a second language, something that happens very often when discussing translation and translation theory. All of the characters in this family, as immigrants, carry versions of themselves that exist in tension. For Evelyn in particular, she has the obedient daughter on one side, a struggling wife, the failed business owner, and the dreamer who once believed in love. This multiplicity is not just narrative, it mirrors the lived experience that many immigrants who must reconcile who they are with who they were. And for Joy, this multiplicity is amplified by her generational distance. She inhabits her own universes, attempting to live authentically as a queer second-generation woman, while still feeling tethered to her mother's expectations. Her rebellion, which is seen through the Everything Bagel and her role as Jobu Tupaki, represents the fragmentation that often comes with bilingual and bicultural identity. Joy's multiversal personas reflect the pressure to be everything for her family and her simultaneous struggle to belong fully in any one version of herself. Language also reflects this multiversal tension. Evelyn's mix of English, Cantonese, and Mandarin highlight her attempts to connect across generation and cultural boundaries. In moments of conflict, language becomes jagged and incomplete, something I very much relate to. However, the film shows that bilingualism can also bridge these gaps. When Evelyn begins to speak to Joy in a way that reflects understanding and acceptance, regardless of the language that they're speaking in, healing becomes possible. By the film's conclusion, Evelyn's journey towards understanding her daughter also becomes a journey towards embracing her own fractured identity. Evelyn's acceptance of Joy's queerness and individuality symbolizes a rejection of cultural expectations and an embrace of multiplicity. In this moment, language no longer serves as a barrier. It becomes secondary to the emotional truth that Evelyn communicates. I see you I accept you, I love you. This resolution highlights a hopeful vision for bilingual and bicultural families. The struggle of navigating two languages and two cultures, which was once seen as a source of division in this film, are all transformed into tools for connection. This film argues that the key to healing lies in embracing the complexities of identity rather than resisting them. Evelyn's final reconciliation with Joy suggests that true understanding transcends language. It begins with empathy, vulnerability, and a willingness to bridge that divide. The exploration of bilingualism in this film affirms that identity is not a single fixed state, but a collection of multiversal possibilities. By learning to accept her own multiplicity, Evelyn paves the way for Joy to do the same, showing that even amidst chaos and linguistic tension, there is room for connection and growth. Now finally, I want to talk about where all these themes intersect. Generational trauma, ADHD, and bilingualism are not separate in this instance, but they're very deeply connected. Evelyn's chaotic navigation of the multiverse is both a literal and metaphorical representation of how these forces are intertwined and how they compound on one another. Her inability to focus on a single task, her overwhelming responsibilities, and her fractured relationships all mirror the cognitive overload of someone with ADHD. However, this overwhelm is not only internal, it is shaped by the emotional weight of her immigrant experience and the pressure to live up to the expectations of Gonggong. For Joy, the intersections are even more pronounced. She inherits this generational trauma of her mother's struggles with dealing with the dissonance of her bilingual and bicultural identity. Growing up with multiple languages and multiple cultural frameworks creates a sense of displacement. She is neither fully Chinese nor fully US American. Now, to all of that, we can add all the pressures that exist of living to her mother, Evelyn's expectations. That's when Joy's nihilistic rebellion starts to make sense. Her identity feels fragmented. Her sense of self is fractured into infinite possibilities. And this experience is heightened by her also generationally passed ADHD, eventually becoming Jobu Tupaki, and as someone who feels everything all at once. Evelyn's inability to communicate her love in a way that Joy can understand, whether due to language, cultural expectations, or her distractions, become a source of pain. Gonggong's rigidity, Evelyn's overstimulation, and Joy's alienation all intersect, forming an emotional knot that feels impossible to untangle. The multiverse is not just a gimmick in this movie like it is in many other films. It is a map of these compounded struggles, showing how trauma, identity, and neurodivergence shapes and deepen one another. The multiverse ties these themes together, offering a metaphor for the chaos, multiplicity, and potential within every life. However, there is a beauty to the multiverse, and it lies in the ultimate message of the film. Chaos is not the enemy, it is part of who we are. By the film's conclusion, Evelyn embraces the multiverse not as something to fix, but as something to accept. She learns to see her fractured identity, overstimulated mind, and imperfect relationships as sources of strength. In doing so, she models a path toward healing for herself, for her daughter, and potentially for her father, a path that is rooted in empathy and understanding. So to conclude this, whatever this is, Everything Everywhere All at Once uses its groundbreaking multiverse framework to explore the intersection of generational trauma, ADHD, and multilingualism. The resolution in this film reminds us that healing begins with empathy. Evelyn's journey towards accepting Joy's identity, and her own, offers a blueprint for breaking cycles of trauma and misunderstandings. By choosing kindness over judgment, Evelyn learns to embrace the multiplicity within herself and her family. This message resonates far beyond the film's cultural and narrative context. Whether grappling with generational expectations, neurodivergence, or the complexities of identity, Everything Everywhere All at Once speaks to anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed, misunderstood, or fractured in any way. It tells us that even amidst chaos, there is hope for connection and for healing. This film challenges its audience to embrace the chaos of life and to see the infinite possibilities within ourselves and others, especially in a world that often feels overwhelming for all of us, regardless of whether we have ADHD or anything else. This film is trying to tell us that we don't need to fix everything. Sometimes the answer lies in showing up for the people that we love and saying, I see you, I accept you, and I love you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this narrative made some sense. It took me a long time to put it together, but I really appreciate the help and the feedback and the support, and I'm looking forward to the next video that I put out. Thank you all again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.